Welcome, everyone, to the HeroX Innovation Leadership Speaker Series. I'm Jamie Elliott. I'm joined today by Lindsey Stutheit. She's the Director of Entrepreneurship and Innovation at the Laramie County Community College. Lindsey, thank you so much for joining. It's really great to have you. Why don't you tell us about yourself? Tell us a little bit about your innovation journey so far.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm super excited to be here. And I love that you started with the hard hitting question right off the bat. It's always the most difficult to answer, even though it seems the simplest. So, my background kind of in innovation and being in that business space really started when I was supporting three different educational startups, not at the same time, just throughout a span. And then I worked with companies of a variety of types as a creative consultant, helping them think about their products, the way that they're doing business, some of their marketing strategies in a more creative, innovative way. And professionally was very involved in career and technical education, and all that kind of led me here to this director position, supporting entrepreneurs and innovation, small business owners here in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Very cool. So, yeah, I'd like to learn more about the community college, about Laramie County Community College, what you all do, what sets you apart in terms of innovation. How do you innovate differently?
Absolutely. We were very fortunate to receive some state funding surrounding economic development, economic growth, strength, stability, and we're able to open a center that we called the Business Studio. And we created this center specifically to help businesses, innovators, entrepreneurs statewide, and getting past some of those really critical moments. Sometimes it's that valley of death, sometimes it's just having a cash flow issue that you need some support getting through. And through the Business Studio services, we've really helped businesses of a variety of types, both small to medium enterprises and then those innovation-driven enterprises. So we've really seen the whole gamut. We've seen people that are at the very beginning, they're in that ideation stage, or they're just in those early stages of growth. And then we've also met with some companies that are towards the end and are trying to figure out how do we exit? How do we take advantage of this position that we're in and maybe start a new venture? So it's been a very all-encompassing. We want to just be that stopping point for individuals when they're at any sort of point in their journey and they're just not sure what the next thing to do is or how to get past something that is challenging. We all know the fail rates on new businesses and entrepreneurial ventures is really high, and we want to change the length of time that these businesses can persist as much as possible and get past some of those early hurdles. Although some of the hurdles and obstacles come later, but that's really our goal, is to help with those acute needs and help more Wyoming businesses persist. We have a ton of business filings, and start rate is really great, but then our persistence rate is fairly low, and so we want to change some of those outcomes.
Interesting. It's interesting the way you described how they are at these different stages, they're at these different points, maybe entry, maybe exit. And I think you get to witness these potentially life-changing moments for them, right? For some of these people and organizations, that's really impactful. I got to work on this challenge with NASA called What's on the Moon. And it's a multi-year, multi-phase, I think $5 million total wrapped up in the prizes. And the premise of the challenge was to design and build electricity, or they didn't like to say power, but electricity systems that could transmit and store electricity generated on the lunar surface. And they would test these ultimately in a vacuum chamber with NASA. And at the final event last fall in Cleveland, the second place team was a startup. First place team was university, and we do see a lot of university teams. And the second place team was a startup that their startup focus was on mining the moon. But they're really good problem solvers, and they saw this challenge and they saw it as a way to seed their startup. They could solve this electricity problem. And they told us at the final event, if they hadn't gotten that funding, their company probably would have gone under. And
Yeah.
it was one of those moments. It sounds like something similar to what you experience in witnessing someone else's journey and seeing someone go on this innovation journey. It's really
It's interesting you bring up
powerful.
money. We give $5,000 in these grants. So if they are working with all of us in this space, they're building this plan and they identify a need. If it's $5,000 or less, we can help pay for that, whether that's a piece of equipment or some legal services, whatever it might be. And it's incredible what a company can do leveraging only $5,000 if they know exactly what it's for and how it's going to change the contracts they can apply for or get them that copyright or intellectual property patent work done. So it's really fascinating to see sometimes how little money, obviously, when we're talking about space and going to the moon and doing things on the moon, the money needs to be a bigger value because the tech is obviously so advanced. But for some of these companies, $5,000 makes such a huge difference. And you just don't think about $5,000 maybe having that impact. But to your point, it's like they are on this incredibly thin string sometimes where $5,000 we get to progress and grow and move forward. Without the $5,000, we're done. I mean, it's just
Right.
fascinating.
Yeah, it is. The first innovation project I ever got to do was for myself, for my own project, and that was the prize as well. It was $5,000, and it made a huge difference. And like you said, that could be $5,000 toward ad spend or towards sales strategy that gets them the traction they need, that gets them that next step, gets them that next open door, and that will make them right. Whereas not having it could break them. It's really interesting. So, can you tell me about some of the programs and projects that you all have going at
Yeah,
the
of
college?
course. So one of the big things that we've struggled with, if you're familiar with Wyoming as a state, it's just an incredibly rural state. So we have pockets of things happening, but they're really far apart often from a distance perspective, and just the volume is quite low. So some of the things that we've really tried to do is connect more of those individuals that are doing similar things that are across the state. So they might be hundreds of miles apart, but really find value in working together, or they're a little bit further down the road, or just able to kind of create those mastermind groups or kind of peer learning opportunities. Another thing that we've been really working on is getting all of the different service providers together every month to really talk about some of these shared businesses and what they need, what we can do to kind of support. So again, we don't have one region of Wyoming that has these two services, but not these five, and another region that has just this thing, but needs these other things, but really trying to help connect all of these services statewide so that we don't have individuals missing out on different components of the services that they need. So that's been another big project that we've tried to do to help create the environment where more innovation, more entrepreneurial thinking, and just quite frankly, more successful business ownership can happen, even if it's just a downtown laundromat. So really trying to shore up, I think, some of the gaps that can inherently happen in again, a low volume, high distance state where you have these just huge areas of rural population. So that's another component of what we've been doing. And then in terms of connecting with the innovators and the business owners in the space, that grant program, helping them really identify what would be a critical need to help them or serve as a catalyst to something bigger, whether that's shoring up a cash flow issue or helping them become eligible for different RFPs from the state or getting them connected with some of the federal contracting training so that they can move forward on a larger scale that maybe they hadn't considered before. So those are obviously very educational components, and certainly sometimes paired with some financial support. And then we are very fortunate at Laramie County Community College. We have, and to clarify, I'm in the non-credit side of the community college. There are 4 credit programs. We have an excellent 4 credit entrepreneurship program, a 4 class entrepreneurship certification that students can add to any set of coursework or pathway that they're on, which is a really cool thing that helps students think about not just being an employee, but maybe someday being an employer and how they can really think about any of our academic courses as a gateway into owning a business or having innovation. So I really appreciate that about our 4 credit side of the community college. And then I'm in the non-credit. So again, I'm serving more of community members and again, statewide efforts as well. And a part of the college, there's I don't want to say maker space because it really doesn't do it justice, but a space at the college that really allows us to do fairly in-depth prototyping, some level of small run production, et cetera. We have an advanced manufacturing and materials center. So we have been able to support some of these innovators in the state with technologies to produce that prototype or to do a small batch run of something so they can start testing the market. And that's That's huge when you think about innovation, especially something that's product driven. The costs and time and resources associated with trying to get something manufactured or developed can be really, really difficult. And in a state like Wyoming, it can be even more challenging. So that's a really cool shared service that we're able to provide at the community college. So we'll have an individual come in, I have this idea for something, and we can very quickly connect them to an engineer that can help them get that, on SolidWorks or some other platform. We can actually help them start getting a 3D print or a 3D metal print. We do have some injection molding capabilities. So it just helps them move more quickly through that ideation process and see, I guess, again, at a quicker rate, whether it's going to be a viable product or a viable opportunity for them to pursue. And it really helps too when they think about their business plan and what it might truly cost them to do a setup fee at a manufacturing facility, et cetera, et cetera. So it's been a great partnership of different resources that we have to help some of those individuals that are on that higher tech innovation side of things, particularly in the product development or manufacturing space.
A lot to unpack there. It's great. So, I mean, first of all, it's an honorable position to be in, to be able to serve in that capacity, right?
Yeah.
Because you you're helping these young entrepreneurs understand that they can do this and that they're not alone. And I think
Well,
that
and they're
that is,
bringing such a fragile idea to you, right? Like
yeah,
they're exposing something that maybe they've kept to themselves, or their first chance to talk about this and have somebody sign an NDA. Like these are all big things. If you don't come from a family or a background that has kind of that heritage, you almost feel crazy or like some sense of like judgment about everything you do. Again, it
sure.
mirrors that sort of maybe fixed mindset or, just some of those things that are that, I don't know, feeling like you don't belong, right?
Sure. Yeah, it's imposter syndrome, right? And what I love is the later message that's coming out now about imposter syndrome, and that it means you're exploring things outside of your comfort zone. And so reframe it. It's a good thing. And but I think that that opportunity, because like you said, they come to you with a fragile idea, and that fragility is with them as well, and you're helping them understand there are others like you. These are other things we've done to support, and you're not in this alone, and you can do this. And then that aspect of getting feedback from potential buyers or the community, not just in rural areas. Discovery is so important in those early stages, because we just naturally, especially when we have a good idea and we're passionate about it, we naturally make a lot of assumptions and don't even
Yes.
recognize that we've made
We have our
assumptions.
blinders on.
Exactly. And so that feedback we have to get, because it's how we course correct and it's how we make it even better. Right. And one thing I hear that you've mentioned, and that I hear from a lot of innovators that I get to talk to, is about playing the role of the connector, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Helping others find things that they didn't know were there. And what I think is interesting, I'd like your perspective on, is in the world we live in, where everything and everyone is vying for our attention. How do you cut through that? How do you help folks realize the good things that are out there that can help them
Yeah.
in their journey?
It's a unique problem here in Wyoming in some ways. Obviously, this is a worldwide problem. But in Wyoming in particular, we have this kind of conservative Western culture that says, I'm going to bootstrap it. I don't need anybody's help. I'm going to make this happen. I don't want to inconvenience anyone. I don't want to take funds from this or that. And that mindset does hurt some of our entrepreneurs. So we have that extra layer of we're not working with individuals that maybe have networking built in to how they think about themselves, like maybe someone in a more metropolitan area might. So we kind of almost double down on that challenge with networking. And again, you think about the space. We don't have a lot of old-fashioned watering holes that people can physically come to. So a lot of this is happening digitally, which doesn't often produce the outcomes that you want it to. So when we're working with individuals, getting them through the door is the first challenge of like, no, 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 you're not taking advantage of a government program. Like you don't need to do this alone. building a team is a good thing. In fact, building a team might be the only way that you can have a successful product. And we want to get this to market. This is a great idea. This is a really important innovation for XYZ industry. Going through that in a conservative rural state is actually really difficult because there's this kind of hard and fast belief that like I need to figure this out on my own. So once we can kind of get people and break that down, and some of the ways we do that is just sharing stories of neighbors and other people in their area that are utilizing services. We want to do a better job actually of getting some of this in print. You're probably thinking like in today's modern age, like, you know, make a podcast or a video series or, do something digital. But we genuinely feel like in a lot of these rural communities, they might pick up this kind of entrepreneurship featured magazine at the dentist office, at some of these places that have to serve a little bit as these watering holes, if you will, um, and get some of these stories in front of them so that they can see that it is part of their culture. And when you think about again some of that like Western cowboy rancher thought process, they're constantly innovating. Like the whole idea of being able to fix anything with baling wire and duct tape is that concept of being able to quickly find ingenious solutions to problems because you don't have other options. So we actually have a population with an incredibly great skill set and problem solving mind, a lot of grit to get through really difficult stages of solving those problems or innovating. So we have all the right ingredients, just sometimes that breakdown in utilizing services, building a team around you can be a little bit tricky. So we want to show examples of others in their area doing that thing. And we also have really worked at, I call it Kevin Baconing, which is pretty much exactly what it is, but really quickly trying to connect people with people they already know, right? Oh, I just reached out to so and so at the chamber because they know so and so here. And so there's only 3 degrees separation from where they are. It doesn't feel like I'm calling in a favor to
Right.
a CEO of a company that's a long ways away, which we have done as well, showing them that it really is their friends, their community members that are helping make these connections in this network. We're not asking these far-flung favors of people in power. Like we're not pulling some sort of string for them. We're working as a community to help support them, really helping show what that networking process is makes a huge difference as well. So those are some of the ways that we've tried to extend the network. And honestly, when I think about the most valuable thing that we offer to businesses and entrepreneurs and innovators here in Wyoming, it is the ability to essentially project manage a connection or a network because it does take that process because you send out emails and you make phone calls and then you have to follow up on that and so replied but they didn't reply all. So again, kind of helping project manage that process to where it gets to that end user and there's a couple of viable supports or solutions on the other end of it makes a huge difference. And so it's really tricky, but some of the ways we've tried to break down some of those barriers, and I think that's fairly applicable to a lot of cultures, um, whether they're in the U.S. or rural or not. But some of those places that end up feeling isolated or maybe have kind of a predisposition to doing it on their own or to doing it in private until it gets to a certain spot, right? We see that a lot too. Like, I don't want to put this baby out into the world until it's really grown up. Well, a lot of times you're going to miss that opportunity because you didn't bring the right experts and team along in that development
Yeah.
process.
I was recently speaking with an innovation leader in city of Birmingham, Alabama, and she shared that they realized that, for community outreach for their community, mailers work a lot, physical
Yes,
mail. And
we have to. Yeah,
it's right. And that's the thing when it comes to the data, what works works. The culture
yeah,
is what it is. And so leverage that. And I love this idea of true entrepreneurial grit. That might be the name of this episode.
love
I
it.
think this is really, really interesting. What you said there at the end about the project management of it. Even doing that, right? Taking a project management approach to your outreach, building these things into a work breakdown structure what it does is it removes emotion from it, because project management is an objective process, right?
Yes.
You are objectively putting things into
Flow chart.
the structure. Right. Right. And then the hesitancy goes away because, or it's
Yep.
diminished because here's a
In the
task I
process
need to
now.
do. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Just got to get this done. That's really interesting.
Well, and it's interesting too, because of that like rural cowboy, Western rancher mindset. A lot of times they don't think of themselves as innovators at all. They're just trying to solve the problem or they're just trying to fix a need. But they're doing it in such a way that really is innovative or could be something that could have that scalability because it does apply to so many other types of problems. And so half the time you just have to convince them that this really is something that's worth pursuing and that it might help legs beyond something maybe more, local. So but that's part of the battle too, is just helping them even think about themselves as innovators in the first place.
Right. Any specific projects or programs or impacts you can share with us?
Yeah, I was thinking about impacts the other day, and as we receive different funds from state, federal government, private, metrics are always tied to stuff, and it's really difficult to think about what metrics actually show that you're making some progress, either economically or with those businesses. Numbers sometimes don't tell a whole story. Sometimes it's really difficult to get concrete numbers. So some of the metrics that we've really been thinking about are, I guess, maybe more simple. Like, do people know where to find the help that they need? That's that doesn't seem like a very exciting metric, but if we can get more yeses over time with that, that's gonna move the needle. So do people know where to find stuff? And this sounds obviously very basic as well, but as we're working with people, do they feel like they're getting quality supports, not just from us, but from everyone else? Because another thing, when you have a bunch of service providers that aren't working together, you reduce the accountability to each other and to the business quite a bit. And so as we've created more of these coalitions, I think we've naturally increased the accountability because all of us are helping one person. There's just more skin in the game to perform at your best and to make sure that everybody in the system is performing at their best, because it's out in the open and we're all trying to support this person. So I think that's another key metric that we want to keep improving on, is that because we're working with each other, we're building in more accountability, and the quality of services we're offering should over time increase, or that would be the goal, is that all of us in this space are working on our own improvements and innovations within what we're providing, and that should create higher quality outcomes. And can we measure that with the satisfaction ratings that we may be getting from the companies that we're supporting? So again, trying to process our own work through the lens of like what would make us feel successful as a business. You know, can our customers find us? Does our product meet their needs? Is it at the appropriate price? Whatever those pieces might be, we're also thinking about that. And so I think for me, as I'm working through my own process of what types of metrics are going to be really valuable to me, I would really love in 5 years for any business in Wyoming to know exactly where they need to go to get the supports that they need, and that they start to break down, I don't want to say mistrust, but when you have kind of pop-up services and you have services that are all over the place, businesses don't trust it over time. It doesn't build some of those things that we critically do need to build to push back against some of the things we previously mentioned with kind of that bootstrap, I'll do it myself mentality. So I think in 5 years, if we had businesses that knew where to go, they knew that they were going to get quality, they knew we were all talking to each other in an effort to build a team around them and to support them, that would be such a huge win to me. And I genuinely think then we would see the numbers change on the number of businesses that were able to persist in Wyoming, because I think those are very closely linked. And I think we would be building that bigger funnel to innovation in the first place if we had more of these businesses persist. So that's my goal. Those are some of the metrics that I would like to track. They're not fancy. They're not revenue. They're not looking at people's profit and loss statements. I think sometimes you can get pretty bogged down in that. One other kind of economic metric that we've really been looking at is a lot of times in these smaller, more rural states, we just kind of recirculate our own money. So our economies are just very incestuous, for lack of better words, and just kind of feed into each other, and that's it. And that there's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't necessarily create maybe some of the strength and resiliency to the economies that we have in the different communities in our state. And so we want to look at also how businesses might be able to bring money, business opportunities from outside the state to start feeding some additional money, taxes, revenue into our economy so that we aren't just recycling our own money, for lack of better words. So that's another on the economic side. I would love to uh, see an increase in what we're attracting and bringing in from potential customers outside of the state. And we're certainly not, I'll help this business because they have the potential to do that. But I would love to see how our work over time might allow more businesses to attract online sales, contracts outside of just our own state government or our own city governments, like how we're able to support them in seeking external revenue.
Those are great, and they fit, right? Like you said, it doesn't have to be profit margins all the time. So for others that may be working in a similar capacity, and that could be in different ways. They could be working with a college. They could be and trying to help local or statewide entrepreneurs, people that are playing that role of connector as you are. Any advice that you would have for them?
Man, I kind of do this the opposite way of a lot of people, and it's certainly not to be difficult, but go back to the old school way of doing things. Don't have AI write your emails. Don't create everything through an automated workflow. Like, while there are efficiencies to that, I think people in every community, whether it's rural or not, need that human connection. They need that personalized connection. And I think it's really tempting to, again, have CRMs and workflows and automated this and have AI generate XYZ proposals and blah, 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 blah. But when it comes to business and when it comes to helping people with their ideas, their babies, keeping it personal, keeping it as a relationship is going to be really huge because you are going to implement a process. You are going to implement a workflow. Back to what we were talking about before, like we are going to project manage this so that we have good outcomes and efficient outcomes. But along the way, don't cut 2 minutes by having AI write your email. Write your email because it sounds like you and it's going to be meaningful to these people. So find those ways that you can automate things, that you can create those efficiencies, that you can plug into a process, but don't overdo it on that tech because you're going to miss out on a lot of really good businesses because they're looking for the connection. They're looking for the opportunity to actually sit down and talk to you or to get on a virtual call and like parse this out with you. A lot of times we'll hear from clients and we'll have sent them emails, and certainly we use some of those automations to like prompt like, hey, we'd love to have a check-in with you, please schedule with us. But when we don't get that response and then we call them on the phone, I mean, we're busy for the next week and a half because we made that personal reach out through a phone call. And half the time we get 3 phone calls done in a day because they're like, oh my gosh, this is happening and this is happening. And I received funding through this, or I had this like it allows for such a richer dialogue and process. And then all of a sudden, again, you're hearing things that you would never have heard, and you can make connections for them that they would have never requested because you heard through their conversation, through their story, a need that they have or a challenge that popped up that they're not even processing as a need or a challenge because they're in it, right? They're again blinders. They're in this thing. So I think that would be my advice to other people. We work in a rural community that maybe requires more of that, but if you're working in a metropolitan area, I would really encourage you to maybe say no to some of the automated note takers and this is and that's, and just be present in your meetings with these business owners and with your partners and create some of those old fashioned telephone networks and Rolodexes, so that you're having maybe more meaningful outcomes. So, yeah. That would be my maybe unpopular approach to the
Right.
AI craze that is upon us and all the amazing tools that are available. Just maybe being really selective about when those appear and how they help you.
Yeah, and it ties right into everything else you've been saying, right? This underlying theme of doing it yourself, that goes for the automation as well. That's really interesting. So how can folks learn more and get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, certainly you can find us on the web, and we'll have that link in there for you. We also work with a lot of different entities in Wyoming, and so there's lots of great entities to connect with throughout Wyoming, whether it's the Wyoming Business Council, the Wyoming Women's Business Center, the Small Business Development Centers throughout the state. And we have really cool supports. We have somebody called Startup Wyoming that's really helping specifically with some of those, innovation-driven businesses are very, very fortunate to have a branch of Generator here in Wyoming. And if you're not familiar with those services, they do awesome accelerator programs. So we just have a ton of partners. They're all on our website. I've certainly forgotten many, but we'd love to connect with you. And even if it's to offer the ability to support people, mentors, consultants, there are always things we're looking for because in an innovation space, it's not cookie cutter. You have somebody walk in and you're like, and this just happened, and you're like, I need somebody in the desalination area in the Middle East to figure out if this product can get pilot. Like, that's an insane ask. But again, within 2 to 3 contacts, you're there. And so if people that are listening to this might be interested in being some of those links, I would absolutely love you to reach out to me. I'll have my email as well, because those are huge. If you have a specific industry that you're in a position to offer a helping hand, I might never reach out to you because we might never have it, but it's so nice to build that network and to feel like you're creating some opportunities. Because again, people aren't like, hey, I'm innovating in this space that happens to be conveniently located in your hometown. That typically isn't the way it works. So
Fantastic.
that'd be perfect.
Well, Lindsay, thank you so much. This was a really, really insightful talk, and I'll be thinking about this one for a while. I really appreciate your time, and thanks so much for
Thanks.
sharing with us.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. I am always happy to talk about what we're doing here in Wyoming. So invite me back.
I will. I will. Maybe in 5 years, we'll see how those metrics are coming along.
Yes, absolutely. That would be fantastic.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Of course.